Great. Good evening and welcome to the I-270 project webinar. Thank you for taking the time to join us and learn about this important project to modernize transportation infrastructure in the area. We are conducting this webinar in English and Spanish, and we need to go over a few logistics before we get started with our presentation and question and answer session.
Hola a todos, bienvenidos a el seminario virtual del proyecto I-270 y de las mejoras que se van a construir. Tenemos una presentación preparada para ustedes el día de hoy, completamente bilingüe, así que vamos a estar dando algunas instrucciones de cómo poder escuchar esta presentación completamente en español.
All right. My name is Mandy Wharton, and I will be the moderator for the English language session. Christian Jimenez, who you just heard from, will be interpreting on the Spanish channel. To join the Spanish audio, click on the interpretation menu and then click Listen in Spanish. For English, you can either select English or just stay here with me. For ASL, go ahead and make that selection there in the interpretation as well.
Como les mencionamos, esta presentación va a ser completamente virtual, así que si usted quiere escuchar esta presentación en español, ahí en la parte de abajo va a aparecer un mundo donde usted puede escuchar la presentación en español. Ahorita ya empezando el programa, vamos a separar el inglés y el español, así que si usted escoge esa versión, va a poder escuchar toda la presentación completamente en español y también participar. Si necesita más instrucciones, ahí lo puede ver de cómo hacer en su pantalla.
All right. This meeting is going to be divided between a presentation from CDOT and a question and answer session in the second half of the meeting. Please feel free to type in questions as you have them, and we will get to them in the end. You can use the Q&A button to type in questions. We'll be monitoring those throughout and then answering them at the end. Also, this meeting is being recorded, and the meeting recording will also be available on the project website after the webinar. We do have several polls that we'll be conducting during the webinar, and you can participate in them by either scanning that QR code that's on the screen right now, or typing in the online website address that I think Jess is going to drop into the chat right now. And you only need to do that one time, and then you'll see the polls throughout the webinar. All right, let's get started. With me today, I have David Marinich, the I-270 project director, and Stacia Sellers, the I-270 communications and public involvement manager. Basil Ryer, the I-270 environmental manager, is out sick today, so I will also be pinch hitting for that portion of the presentation. David is going to provide some background about the I-270 project and the environmental impact statement, or EIS, process that we are conducting. Stacia is going to describe the outreach that we've conducted and what we've heard through the process. And then Dave will be reviewing the alternatives we developed and what we're evaluating in detail through the environmental impact process. And I will discuss the environmental review process and how the analysis will work. And then we're going to take some questions and leave a little bit of time at the very end to talk about next steps. Before we get started, we're going to initiate our first poll. So CDOT did a lot of advertising associated with these public meetings, and we'd like to know, how did you hear about this webinar? And remember, you can either use that menti.com code, or you can scan the QR code here to participate in the polls. I give a little bit more time on this one just because we're getting our first setup done. So we'll give a minute here as people are starting to vote here. And you can continue to vote throughout this process, and the feedback that we have is important. So I'm going to give you a minute here, but as we move on to the rest of the presentation, the poll stays open, so you can continue to poll. Right. Well, it looks like we do have a number of people who are on our email distribution list, which is great. We're going to give you some ways to stay engaged at the end of the meeting with different ways to participate in the process. And we are glad that there are a lot of you that are already on our current distribution channels, and we will certainly look for opportunities to continue to get information out that way and get your feedback back in those channels. All right, let's move into the main part of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Dave to talk about the I-270 project.
Thank you, Mandy. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today to learn about the I-270 Corridor Improvements Project. This corridor is one of Colorado's most critical transportation routes, connecting key highways like I-25, I-70, and I-76. It serves as an economic backbone for the region, facilitating commerce, freight movement, and local travel while supporting thousands of jobs and businesses. So purpose and need. The infrastructure on the I-270 corridor is over 50 years old. It's in poor condition. We have narrow shoulders, short ramps, outdated designs that create serious safety risks, while congestion causes frustrating delays and disrupts the freight efficiency. Without action, these problems will only worsen, impacting both our economy and our quality of life. So that's why CDOT is fully committed to addressing these challenges. This project will modernize the corridor, replacing deteriorating infrastructure, enhancing safety, and reducing congestion. We're prioritizing solutions that minimize environmental impacts, improve connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists, and reflect the values and priorities of the surrounding communities and the traveling public.
All right, we are going to move on to another poll here. So I know a lot of you have been engaged in the I-270 project to date, and based on what you've either observed or what Dave has talked about, we're going to ask you what you think the biggest needs, issues, or concerns are for the I-270 project. This is an open-ended answer, so just type in anything that you wish here, and if there are things that you want us to address as a question, please put those in at the end. And if you see something that you agree with, you can like that or vote for that as well. Great. We have just a couple more minutes. I know it's a little bit more challenging to type in answers. We have kind of a mix of typed in answers and some multiple choice here. So I'm just going to give a little bit more time for things to populate here. And this word cloud, the bigger the word is, the more people who are saying that. So, there's opportunities here again to provide lots of feedback. Stacia's going to talk a little bit more about some of the issues that we've heard to date, but this is really helpful feedback. So thank you all for participating. All right, I'll give just a couple more seconds here if anybody has anything else that they want to type, and then we're going to go back to David to talk through the project schedule and the EIS process. All right, and remember, you can continue to type in answers if you want to, or if any of this raises a question that you want to ask, please put that in the Q&A box as well, and we will get to that at the end.
All right, thanks, Mandy. So here's our project schedule. As I mentioned in previous presentations, we are currently in the midst of the National Environmental Policy Act, so that's the NEPA environmental review, which is being conducted as an environmental impact statement, or also known as an EIS. The EIS is a very comprehensive review of potential ways to improve the I-270 corridor, referred to as alternatives. The EIS also carefully documents environmental and community impacts, as well as our commitments to mitigate any negative effects identified during this process. So while CDOT understands the urgency to act on this corridor, we also understand the importance of getting it right. So we're working very closely with residents and businesses and stakeholders to ensure that the final design balances immediate needs with long-term sustainability and equity. Once the National Environmental Policy Act process is complete, we plan to move into final design and construction of the project. As the first phase of construction, we would prioritize replacing deficient bridges that are at the end of their useful life. And in the next slide, I'll provide a little bit more detail about the EIS process and what you can expect through the rest of this EIS. So the NEPA process is both structured and adaptable. It allows us to address technical challenges while also responding to community concerns. At this stage in the EIS, we have developed alternatives that might meet the project needs, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the presentation later. And we're now analyzing these alternatives in detail, focusing on potential impacts of the environment and the community. This analysis includes identifying ways to mitigate any negative effects and incorporating enhancements that benefit the broader project area. So if everything proceeds as planned, we anticipate releasing the draft EIS in the first quarter of 2026. And the draft EIS represents a major milestone in the process. It provides a comprehensive analysis of those alternatives along with the proposed mitigation strategies. And public and agency input on the draft EIS is critical. It's the formal opportunity to provide comments. So ideally, effective outreach efforts will have ensured that the information in the draft EIS reflects what we've heard from the stakeholders so far. CDOT and FHWA are going to carefully consider and respond to all comments on the draft EIS before finalizing the EIS and issuing the record of decision. That's also known as the ROD, which is the last step in the EIS. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Stacia Sellers. She's our communications manager, and she's going to review some of the inputs about the project that we've heard so far and the ways that we're gathering community feedback.
Yes, thank you, David. Our project team has been hard at work. We've participated in over 100 events and engaged with hundreds of people to understand what matters most for the corridor, the project, the community, and the environment. This week's public meetings and this webinar provide us with an opportunity to share what we've learned so far and gather even more input. In scoping of what we've heard so far, we've heard consistent themes that will guide our approach as we move forward. Key concerns include improving safety by addressing narrow shoulders and short ramps, reducing traffic congestion during peak hours, and enhancing non-motorized transportation options, such as biking, walking, and transit. Stakeholders have also highlighted the importance of minimizing environmental impacts, protecting air and water quality, preserving natural habitats, and ensuring the project enhances overall community livability and quality of life. How we've responded. The feedback we've received has been invaluable. It's not just about connecting with a large number of people, it's about how their insights and suggestions have truly helped refine the project, making it more focused and reducing potential impacts. We've made significant progress in advancing the project in response to public feedback. This includes initiating a more detailed environmental review through the EIS, revising the draft purpose and need, and introducing new bicycle and pedestrian improvement elements. We've also expanded the range of alternatives to include non-highway options and developed a multicultural outreach plan with bilingual community liaisons. In addition, we've launched a pre-construction air quality monitoring project, increased public engagement through in-person outreach, and convened stakeholder workshops to collaborate on the vision for I-270. Lastly, we've identified funding partnerships to support other needed transportation improvements within the study area. Public involvement activities. Public input is essential throughout this process. At every stage, from brainstorming alternative designs to suggesting mitigation strategies, your voice helps shape the project to meet community needs and priorities. There have been and will be lots of opportunities for you to get involved. Ask questions or provide comments tonight or later through in-person meetings, online comment forms, email, or telephone or hotline. Contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation.
Great, we're going to move on to another poll. As Stacia mentioned, there are lots of ways to get engaged with the project, and to help us, help you help us by learning more about the project and providing feedback. What are the ways that would be most valuable for you to get involved? And we have a couple of choices here: webinars like this, in-person public meetings, which we had one last night. We have another one on Saturday. Email updates, news stories, neighborhood events, or other things. And if you have any suggestions at all, again, you can type them in here, or you can type them in as a question, or go in online and fill out a comment form. Come to one of the public meetings, fill out a comment form, send an email. There's lots of ways to get involved, and we'll have that contact information at the end of the presentation as well. Right, well, it looks like that, I guess not surprisingly, since you all are at a webinar is a good way for you to get involved in the project. We do have another webinar scheduled on Tuesday, same time, from 6 to 7. So if you know of anybody else that may want to learn more about the project through that means, please feel free to join us then, or join us tomorrow on Saturday morning at the Eagle Point Recreation Center for an in-person public meeting, and then sign up for our email subscriptions, our email distribution list. We're happy to send out information, and whatever, if you have a neighborhood event, anything that you want us to attend, please provide that as well, and we are happy to do whatever works best for you. It's really been a rewarding process to have so many community members engaged in this project. All right, well, thanks so much for that. We're going to go back to Dave to talk a little bit more about the EIS alternatives. So David.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. And just wanted to add on to that public meeting in person at Eagle Point Rec Center on Saturday. That's going to be from 9 a.m. to noon. So we hope to see you there. We're going to have roll plats out on the table and kind of get into a little bit more details about some of these things. So it'd be great if you can come by. So yeah, CDOT needs to address these travel time, reliability, safety, freight, transit, bike, and ped challenges that we have on the corridor. So we evaluated 7 primary alternatives for improving I-270, along with a no action alternative. So even though the doing nothing option is not viable, it serves as a baseline for analysis. The alternatives include variations of similar elements like replacing outdated infrastructure and bridges, repairing the pavement, widening the shoulders, lengthening ramps, reconstructing the Vasquez Boulevard interchange, and adding pedestrian and bicycle improvements. The alternatives do differ in lane configurations on I-270, ranging from keeping the 2 current lanes in each direction, adding 1 highway lane in each direction, and adding 2 highway lanes in each direction. So after we've evaluated these alternatives in quite a bit of detail in 2023 and a little bit into 2024, we have refined and are evaluating 2 alternatives in detail. These are referred to as the build alternatives. So both build alternatives that we're looking at in detail add 1 travel lane in each direction. These 2 build alternatives are the 3 general purpose lanes alternative and what we call the 2 general purpose and 1 express lane that accommodates transit alternative. And they're popping out there on the screen. So, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail here on this slide. Both of the build alternatives replace outdated infrastructure and bridges, repair pavement, widen shoulders, lengthen and improve on and off ramps, reconstruct the Vasquez Boulevard interchange, and add pedestrian and bicycle improvements. The build alternatives can be constructed mostly within the CDOT right-of-way and will not require any displacements. The build alternatives vary in how the new highway lane would operate. So one would be a general purpose lane like what is out there now, and the other would be an express lane, which could be used by buses and high occupancy vehicles for free, and by trucks or other drivers that choose to pay a fee. So we recommend these alternatives as the build alternatives instead of the others, because if the project does not add an additional lane in each direction, the travel time and reliability needs would not be met, and it would not improve transit or freight operations on the corridor. We looked at adding just a bus lane, but that does not improve travel for freight or other traffic, and demand does not warrant a dedicated lane for transit. Adding 2 lanes in each direction also does not meet, largely because of the length of the I-270 corridor. It's only 6 miles, and I-70 and I-25 don't have enough capacity on either end to process additional vehicles from 2 extra lanes in each direction on I-270. So in these scenarios with 2 extra lanes in each direction, I-270 would back up from the ends and would actually worsen congestion compared to only having 1 new lane in each direction. So throughout our engagement with the public over the last few years, we've heard a very strong desire for enhancing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So in response, we've developed a very comprehensive approach that addresses both corridor-wide and location-specific needs. We're ensuring safer and more accessible transportation options for all users. First, on a corridor-wide level, what we're doing is including future-ready bridges designed with wider sidewalks and enhanced lighting. So what I mean by future-ready bridges is they fit into transportation master plans from local governments like Adams County and Commerce City that enhance bike and ped options. We will be adding a new bicycle and pedestrian overpass to allow crossing over I-270 between Quebec and Vasquez. And then also opportunities for improved wayfinding signage and lighting to improve connectivity and safety. So next, we've identified 5 specific locations for targeted crossing improvements. That's at York Street, Vasquez Boulevard, South Platte, and Sand Creek. And then a new RTD bus stop at Quebec Street and Sand Creek Drive. If you have any other ideas or problems that you think we should address, please let us know.
All right, we're going to move on to another poll, and I did see that Juan, you have your hand up, but if you wouldn't mind typing in any questions that you have so that we can get to those at the end, that we're going to move through the presentation, and then we're really happy to take questions. So if you wouldn't mind typing it, that would be fantastic. So as far as the other elements that you might want to learn more about, there's a few different choices here, just of things that may be of interest that we can help you understand more about. So we've got a couple of different options here. Travel lanes, and that could be the operation of them or the number of them, the capacity, anything about interchanges and merging, potentially more information about the bicycle and pedestrian improvements, more information about transit, drainage and hydraulics, bridges, traffic operations, or anything else. And again, if there's anything that you want to know more about on those alternatives, that there's a lot of information on the project website, and we're certainly happy to answer any questions here. So please do type those into the chat, and or into the question and answer component, and we will definitely get to those at the end. I'm going to give a little bit of time. These multiple choice ones do go a little bit faster, but if you have something other that you want to hear about, again, just please do type that in so that we can address any questions that you might have. I'm going to give just a couple seconds here, and then we do have another poll coming up right on the end of this one. So we will give just another minute or so here and then move on. Okay. So our next poll is about outreach opportunities. So is there anything that you can think of how we could improve the project or the outreach opportunities? So things that, in terms of the scope of the project, or the ways that people can be involved in the project, or the types of outreach, or the number of outreach opportunities. Any suggestions that you have here? Again, this is another open-ended one, so I'll give you a minute to type in, and if you see something you like, you can definitely just vote for that, or type in something here. Again, also type anything into the questions. We're happy to get to those as well. While we're waiting here, we have had a really good group of people that have been really helpful in getting word out to community. So we're really pleased with the level of involvement that we've had from a lot of different groups, and I know that a lot of you have friends and neighbors that have helped. Interview with Kyle Clark. We did have that on 9 News was interview. There was an interview on 9 News that I think is still available online. So Stacia did an interview there, and that is available. We can put that on the project website as well if that's something that people are interested in seeing. Yeah, sharing how the project will be funded, that if that's a question, I think we can definitely get to that, and we'll address that there too. At the end here, some a lot of great suggestions there. Thank you for those. And again, if it looks like people are still typing, so I'm gonna give it just a couple more minutes here, and then we're gonna take a look at the environmental review process. All right. And again, lots of different ways to share input. I see some people liking some of these comments, so that is helpful. We are always interested in hearing from anybody who has any interest in the project and answering any questions we can. So thank you for those suggestions. All right. Let's move on to the environmental considerations. So protecting the environment is a cornerstone of this project. Key areas of focus include air quality, water resources, and community amenities such as recreational resources, aesthetics, business and employers. And we're committed to minimizing the project's environmental footprint while meeting transportation goals. Transportation improvements also present a lot of benefits to the surrounding community, which has been underserved by transportation investments compared to other areas of the metro area. The I-270 corridor serves as a vital economic link, supporting businesses and ensuring efficient freight movement. By reducing congestion and improving reliability, this project will help sustain regional economic growth and spur opportunities for community investment. It's important that the project enhances all modes of travel, and that includes better connectivity for pedestrians and cyclists, as well as improved transit options, ensuring that the corridor serves everyone effectively. As we move into the environmental analysis process, our team is currently evaluating environmental impacts of the project alternatives. And the impact analysis process involves a couple of key steps. So we'll be analyzing the construction footprint, considering operational changes to the highway and the surrounding roadway network to understand the area that's affected and the long-term impacts, determining potential impacts on the environment and the community, and then revising the design or construction methods to minimize or avoid these impacts. And lastly, we'll be developing and implementing mitigation strategies to address any unavoidable impacts. The image shown here is an example of this process. So this is looking at the proposed design of the I-270 bridge over the South Platte River. To protect the environment, the design team carefully evaluates how the bridge interacts with the surrounding land and water. And this bridge, for instance, spans a waterway and the floodplain to minimize any impacts to the river. Additional considerations in this example include looking at how the trail access can be maintained during construction and using options such as temporary trail detours to reduce disruptions during construction. All right, we're going to go back to our poll now. So we have heard from a lot of feedback over this entire process about the environmental issues that that you are most concerned about, but wanted to make sure that we were hearing that we're focusing on the right things. So we have a few things here you can vote for, and then also anything else that you have, again, feel free to let us know. We will be looking at more than 20 different resource areas through the environmental review process. We've highlighted some that we've heard commonly, some big concerns from community members about. So aesthetics, air quality, business and economic impacts, potential construction impacts and disruptions during construction, environmental justice, noise, recreation, water resources, or anything else. I'll give just a minute here for the voting on this one. Looks like everyone's getting the hang of the poll, so that's really helpful. And we do have one more poll coming in after this one, so and that will be the end of our polling, and then we'll be getting into Q&A. Okay. Thank you all for that. So our last poll here is another one that, again, any suggestions that you have or ideas that could help enhance the community resources or the environmental resources in the area. These are just any ideas that you have here. Again, you can type them out here, vote for things that you like, that you see. We are not interested just in avoiding negative impacts, but really making the project something that has community benefit and really enhances the existing environment in the project area. So we'll leave this one open for just a bit for people to make any kind of suggestions here. And then we're going to get to questions. All right, well, oh, looks like we are getting a couple more in here. I'll give just a few more, just a few more minutes here. we're good on time. We're about halfway through our webinar, and we have a fair amount of time for questions. So we'll keep this poll open for just a minute, but again, if you have other questions, we've got a few here in the queue, but if you have any other questions, this would be the time to type those in, and then we'll get our panelists involved in helping to answer your questions. Okay. I think we're ready to move on and we will end the presentation with different ways to get involved. So if there's anything that you are interested in knowing more about, or there's things that you want to share, we will show you. There's lots of different opportunities to provide that kind of feedback. As far as the questions that we have here, I have a few to date, and feel free again to keep typing things into the Q&A if you have additional questions. The first one, Dave, I have here is about funding. What is CDOT's budget for the project, and is there any federal involvement in the project?
Yeah, to date, we have $4.8 million of federal funding for planning of the Vasquez interchange at I-270. We have approximately $200 million of strategic funds, which is state Senate bill funds. And then we also will be funded through the Bridge and Tunnel Enterprise, which is in charge of repairing the state's poor bridges.
Kind of related to that question, we have another question about those deficient bridges. You mentioned that they are at the end of their life. Are they going to fail before you finish this project? What's CDOT doing to make sure that the traveling public is safe?
We do not believe they are going to fail. They have been inspected many times by the bridge experts and inspectors. We've recently done an inspection in 2024 and do not feel that they are going to fail. They are at the end of their useful life, so we are looking at ways to expedite the replacement of those bridges.
Great. I have a couple questions here on alternatives. I think, Dave, again for you, but if I know we have Ashley Orano on the line as well on the design side, but the question is, where can we see the CDOT's analysis of the rejected alternatives?
Yeah, that's going to be posted within the draft environmental impact statement, which we're going to publish in early 2026. And then, like we mentioned in this presentation, the draft EIS is open to public comment, and we'll also have a public hearing, and we'll address DEIS comments prior to the FEIS and ROD stage.
There is, I have a couple more questions coming in, so thank you all for keeping those coming. Another one here I have in the queue is related to transit. I have two that are kind of similar. One is, how do you know that there's not demand for a dedicated transit lane? And then what kind of things have you been doing to benefit transit?
Yeah, so when I mentioned that there's not a demand for a lane dedicated to transit, that does not mean that there's not demand for transit. RTD is a participating agency on this project, so that means that we regularly coordinate with them to understand how we can improve this corridor from their perspective and for their users. And they have told us that their buses operate very efficiently and reliably through an express lane. They've told us that the express lane alternative would work best for their current route, which is the Flatiron Flyer 5, which runs from Boulder to Anschutz Medical Campus. So part of the reason we've made that statement is based off the travel demand modeling that we've done, the traffic modeling, and also our coordination with RTD as a participating agency.
And then I think the other part of that question, Dave, was what are we doing to benefit transit? And I apologize if you did answer that, but I didn't hear that specifically.
Yes, so the express lane, one of the alternatives that we're evaluating in detail, if we were to put that in, the RTD buses and any other government-owned buses would be able to use that lane for free. And also, if you have more than 3 people within your vehicle, you could use it for free with a transponder.
Okay, I have a couple.
I should say 3 or more people within your vehicle.
I have a couple related to construction. This one may be related a little bit to construction, but maybe a more broad question. So I'll just read it the way that it was posed as, will there be any economic assistance to local businesses that are affected?
Mandy, can you help answer that one since you're looking at the those type of resources on this project?
Yeah, I didn't mean to ask the question so that I could answer it, but that's the way it turned out. Yeah, that we will be looking for any effects to local businesses. We don't anticipate any direct effects in terms of any displacements of businesses, but there is obviously some changes in operations that happen. Some of those could be improvements, and some of those could be, adverse effects, probably likely during the construction period. And typically, and I'll let Stacia maybe add on to this a little bit about the types of communication and business assistance that happens from a communication access standpoint during big construction projects, but there is usually some sort of there's always some sort of a plan to make sure that existing businesses can stay operational and functional during construction. And depending on the level of impacts that are expected and the types of businesses that are expected, that'll be tailored with individual businesses. We are also doing a lot of outreach with businesses. And I think just on Monday this week, we had a town hall with some local businesses that were affected. But again, if there's some particular things that you're worried about, this would be the great time to provide that information so that we can really tailor the types of assistance that we provide as mitigation strategies to ensure that businesses stay viable in the corridor, both now and into the future. Stacia, do you want to add anything to the type of communication or other activities that happen for businesses during construction?
Yeah, I mean, you really covered everything that we would normally do. But yeah, if there is going to be any impacts, we'll work with our bilingual community liaisons to talk with the businesses to make sure that all business owners are thoroughly informed about the traffic impacts that they can expect. We'll also work through different solutions for potentially marketing for businesses to make sure that they're not losing customers during construction. But these are all things that we will start to map out the closer that we get to construction and create those coping communications plans.
And again, the more information that businesses provide about the way that they use I-270, the way that they have customers, the way that their employees get to work, we are working hard with businesses to try and understand their operations so we can understand what those impacts really are and the right ways to mitigate those. We do have a tailored approach based on the specific businesses that are in the area. So if there's any businesses that are interested or concerned about the project, either its long-term effects or construction-related impacts, please reach out. We're happy to talk to you, and also it really helps us to design a project and a construction plan that is going to be the most meaningful in terms of how we mitigate those types of impacts. All right, another kind of construction related one is if the construction begins as planned, when is it going to be completed? So I think that's kind of how long is construction going to take once you have a plan?
Yeah, so we anticipate starting construction in 2027. The first phase would be reconstructing those bridges that are currently in poor condition. And reconstructing the bridges would take about 3 seasons, so about 3 years. And then to finish the rest of the corridor, it could take approximately another 2 or so years. We're still trying to finalize the total schedule once the scope of the project becomes more clear. But it could take in total, in a phased way, up to 5 years to complete.
Kind of related to this one, why does this process take so long? Are there any ways that it could be implemented sooner? It's been already going on so long.
Yeah, one of the reasons in 2023, CDOT moved from conducting an environmental assessment into doing an environmental impact statement. So we started our NEPA process in 2020, and we originally thought it was going to be an environmental assessment. And then as we looked through the impacts and looked through some of the designs and the request from the community, we decided to move to that EIS. And then an EIS is a very process-oriented process that you have to go through. And Mandy, you can talk a little bit about what type of things are required for us to complete an EIS.
One of the an EIS, as Dave mentioned, is the highest level of environmental review. So it is a very hard look at all of the potential impacts. So it raises not just the level of analysis, but also the profile of the project. So I think it starts to raise, it gives more attention to the surrounding areas, and we start to hear a lot more feedback about the interactions with things. There's a lot more attention that's paid to projects that have the potential to have impacts on the community that would be evaluated through the environmental review process. There are some statutory requirements about the length of time for those to take. So we are on a clock trying to complete this as soon as and as efficiently as possible. But as Dave mentioned early in the process, while we're interested in getting this done, we're also interested in getting it done right. And we really want to make sure that we have buy-in and true understanding of ways to make this project the least impactful and meet our goals in this process of really mitigating and avoiding as many of the impacts, the negative impacts to the community, and also taking it a step further to leave the project area in a better condition than it is today. So I think I only have one more question in the chat, and we probably have time for a couple more if anybody has any, and then we'll answer this last question and then move on to the contact information. I do have one more, and this actually, I'm going to go ahead and answer this one. It came in as a kind of a follow-up, I think, on the construction schedule. And so I'll answer that one first, and then we'll have the last question is kind of on a different topic. So the question is, with the length of the project's construction, is the population growth taken into account in order to accommodate the future impact of the improvements and assure it will be positive? I think, how far out are we projecting? And if this process takes so long, are we already going to be behind the curve when the construction happens?
Yeah, I'm going to hand that one over to Ashley, who's helped us with the traffic modeling to explain that process and how far out we've projected traffic on this project.
Yeah, and it's a good question. We take several programs that account for future growth. First, we start off with looking at what the existing traffic counts are, and then using some of these plans that you'll see with like Adams County has future plans and CDOT has other projects of future plans. We pull that into our traffic modeling software and then project it out to year 2050 is what we're looking at. So long of the short is that, yes, we do look at it at 2050 for the exact reasons that you wrote in your comment, is to make sure that what we are proposing isn't going to, fail tomorrow. It is appropriate for a 2050 growth.
Great. Okay, the last question is, has there been any consideration of moving truck traffic onto E-470?
Yeah, I can take that. E-470 is not CDOT owned, so we would not be able to move truck traffic on to E-470 without coordinating with them. So we haven't fully explored that idea yet, but I think that we will take that as a comment that might be something that we can look into in a little bit more detail.
And that is a comment that we have heard before. There has been a lot of discussion about how freight moves around the area. And so that is definitely something that the team is looking into of, how can we serve the freight traffic that is intended for 270 and also not disproportionately impact the 270 corridor with freight that could potentially go elsewhere. A lot of those may be beyond the project's ability to address immediately, but it certainly is, it's the kind of topic that, a big project like this starts to ask those kind of regional questions, and we have the opportunity to talk to some of the other, entities in the area. And just before we end that, if you're interested, Dr. Cog, the Denver Regional Council of Governments is doing a regional freight plan, and that might be another place to start to look at where different freight might go, and that might be a place to also get engaged if that's something that is of interest, to you in particular. All right, we're gonna move on to the last slide and wrap up here. Thanks everybody so much for attending tonight. It was really nice to have this opportunity to talk to you and to tell you a little bit about the progress that we're making on the corridor. So again, we've really had a lot of great engagement from the community and lots of ways to stay engaged through this process. Here's a couple of different ways that you can stay involved with us, attending meetings. And again, we mentioned we have a couple of meetings still going on, the in-person meeting Saturday morning at the Eagle Point Rec Center, and then another webinar on Tuesday. If you have anything you want to request, a project presentation or an update or a tour, if there's, if you want, we're happy to facilitate those as well for either individuals or groups. So if there's people that you think are interested that weren't able to make it or want to have more information, we're always available to, to help do one-on-one types of information as well. Or send us an email. Traditionally, we'll respond to all of those. Visit the website. We try to keep the website up to date with some of the project updates, the information on tonight's webinar. The recordings will be available. The materials from the public meetings are also available on the project website. So that is a good source of information. And if you want to have more regular updates, we're doing monthly updates on the project progress. If you want to subscribe to the email distribution list, or you can type your email into the chat. If you want to do that, we can add you that way as well. And if you want to call the hotline, you can leave a message there, and someone will get back to you there as well. And any way you want to provide your comments, whether it's by phone or whether it's by talking to one of our team members or whether it's writing down a comment in the online or at one of our public meetings or tonight in our webinar, we are happy to take those comments and we get them distributed to our team. And we do really pay attention and take seriously all of the different input that we have received. And it really has made this project a much better project as a result of your involvement. So thank you very much for your interest in the project. And if you are interested in staying involved, please do. And thank you again for attending tonight, and we hope to see you at a future event. Good night, everybody.